we are one more day with Heart of Hollywood Media. And I have a very special guest today. Her name is Kelly Bennett, and she is a broadcast journalist. She also is a society editor for 5 different newspapers, so it's incredible. And she's gonna talk a little bit about her career as a PR, broadcast journalist, communitary. My Spanish is
Community affairs.
yes, and she has done a lot for nonprofit organizations and kids. So Kelly, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me here. I'm very excited.
The pleasure is ours.
Well, where do you want me to start? With my public relations? You want to do the society?
I would like to start like how did you start as a broadcast journalist?
Oh, Lordy. Well, I'll do the short version. I was married for many years. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I wanted to have a career and get a job. Didn't know what I wanted to do, so I took a course in women in careers at our local college, and they directed me to 3 different types of careers that would be good for me. However, you have to look at reality on whether or not you could do that career. And the first one was airline attendant.
Okay.
Well, having 2 small children, you can't really jet off and do that.
Cannot fly.
The second career was drug abuse counselor for teenagers.
Okay.
And knowing myself, I know I would probably bring all the kids home and have them live with me, because I would say, no wonder you're on drugs. Your parents are all messed up. So I would do that.
Sure.
Third one was broadcast journalism. And I thought, well, what is that? And that's basically telling stories on TV. And I thought, okay, well, can I do that here locally? And they said, well, you've got to fly around and spend your 2 years at all these different stations. And I said, well, is there an easier way? And they said, well, there's a cable news station that is local, and cable news usually is local area. So I thought, okay, well, I walked into the cable news station, and my blood just was on fire. And do you know when you belong somewhere?
Yes, absolutely.
You feel that
the drive,
the adrenaline going through your body. And I went up to the general manager, and I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I am going to work with you someday. Sure. I said, I don't care if it's cleaning toilets, but I am going to work here. And he said, okay. And the next day, I signed up for all the news classes. I said, what's the fastest way of getting a job? And they said to be an intern. The next day, I went back to that broadcast news station and said, I'd like to be an intern. They thought that I was in my senior year. I was a freshman.
Yes.
And they hired me as an intern. The next day, I went out on my first news story, not even taking one class. Because I fit the part. I looked it. I had my Yvonne Picon suit with the linen with the pinstripes and the beige pumps and the pearls, and I looked like a reporter.
How is your experience for, if you was a freshman and, to go out there, I guess that proves the burning desire. When you want to do something, I mean, you do whatever you can to achieve that.
Exactly.
And to be in an environment that you are being sent out to your broadcast pretty much your first news story. Right. How do you felt? I mean, can you explain?
I was actually really proud that they had picked me to do it, number one. Sure. Number two, of course I was scared, but you swallow that fear and know that you have a job to do.
Okay.
And you just, I don't want to say it, you fake it till you make it, but I mean, you just kind of, you waddle your way through, and also it was the maturity too, because you got to remember, I was in my 30s.
Of course.
I wasn't the 18-year-old intern coming out of college, not having any life experience.
Absolutely.
I had 2 children. I literally was a manager of my house.
And talking about children, I know that you do. You help various nonprofit organizations with kids, and I want to go back especially to something that I read from your bio, and this is the Amber Alert, that those message that got into your phone, and it's like Amber Alert, and I always check on that, and because kids are precious, but can you tell me more about that, because I know that you're being so involved with that?
Well, I'm very proud of my involvement. The Amber Alert system came from Texas.
Okay.
And it was named after, after a little girl named Amber Hagerman. And she was kidnapped and unfortunately murdered. But the Texas, her parents, and worked with the governor's office and the police department, and they came up with this idea of informing the police of what happened. Because back in the day, if you were to tell somebody that my child was stolen or kidnapped, nobody would talk about it because they were afraid to hinder the case. So it was like,
Sure.
it was
Very quiet.
very quiet, and the police and the news media at that time did not get along. All right, some of them did, but majority of them they were always fighting because the media was always putting out something, and the police was like, "No, you're going to ruin the case. We can't go to court, or we're not."
There's always that, you know,
exactly.
like fight
There's
between
too many
media.
people know about it. So there was a meeting amongst, I guess, the National Sheriff's Associations, and the Orange County Sheriff's Department was the only sheriff's department that stepped up to Texas and said, you know what, we'd like to try that program here in Orange County. And I was working for the local news station, and they approached us and they said, would you partner with us? And we said, okay. And they asked me if I would be the point person for our news station. And I worked with the California Governor's Office, the Sheriff's Department, implementing the post-training tape. And the post-training tape is the police officer's standard training.
Sure.
To literally train police officers and sheriff's departments on how to go about implementing, working with the news media with this problem that we're having.
And what was the result of that training?
The training was a videotape that we would show the police officers, and the police officers would learn about how it is it's going to be done.
Okay.
So it took you from point A to the result.
Okay.
And we filmed everything, and we created bumpers for our news station we did fake, kidnappings, well, we interrupt this program, and our news anchor, we're gonna, Amber Alert,
Yes.
and we put this whole thing together, even to the point where, this was when fax machines was the big, fax machines.
Yes.
And they needed somebody to go from the newsroom, getting the fax machine and running it into the producer.
Sure.
And they didn't have it. I go, well, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So here I am, my
Yes.
big 15 minutes of fame. I'm getting the fax machine. I'm like, oh, it's an Amber Alert. And I'm running into the producer's office.
And I think that is one of those things that, that is priceless.
Right.
And it's so important.
But you know what was interesting? This was back in the late 90s that this happened. I want to say around 98, 99. And we had a huge, I'll never forget this, we had a huge press conference. Every news station was there. And they asked me to sit at the table.
Sure.
With the Attorney General and the Sheriff's Department. And I'm up there going, oh, hi, it's from the news office. And they said, well, this is what we got. And they put like maybe 15 seconds on the news about what we're doing.
Sure.
And it wasn't really looked at by anybody.
Wow.
Until 2002, I believe.
Okay.
When Samantha Runyon, little 5-year-old girl, was kidnapped, molested, and murdered.
Okay.
And this is from our sheriff, and he said, we implemented it, and he looked in that camera, and he said, we're going to find you. We're going to find, within minutes, we were on air with this kidnapping, and we found him the next day.
Wow.
Because of the Amber Alert. Well, what happened 2 weeks later, the Los Angeles, they said, we want to check that out, so can we look at it? So we drove it up there. They looked at it. They said, this is pretty cool. Put it on. A few days later, 2 girls were rescued from a shootout up in the hills. And all of a sudden, LA took it to Sacramento. Governor there took it to the president.
Wow, and
It went nationwide. It just spread.
But it takes one person sometimes, or a group of people, and I want to thank you personally for that. Because I think those kind of things is when people get together. And have a purpose to find these kind of things.
Well, the 2 ladies that I worked with, I have to give kudos to them.
Sure.
Captain Christine Murray, she was with the Orange County Sheriff's Department, and Nina Solardo from the Attorney General's office. The three of us were together, constantly just working on this and putting it together. So it takes a village to put the whole thing, and it takes people talking about it.
So guys, you know, I want to mention here very quick, if you see an Amber Alert in your cell phone, please, you know, I know that sometimes you're going to a party or at the bar or an event, but you know, if you see an Amber Alert, you know, it can be your kid or your neighbor or your family, please check it out and, you know, help us to find more kids in this scenario.
But what's really nice would happen, Erin Runyon, Samantha's mother, she started the Joyful Child Foundation in memory of Samantha Runyon. And I think it's 10 or 15 years old now, and she has utilized the death of her child to bring awareness, to advocate for harsher laws for pedophiles and those people who have been convicted, changing laws, going up to Sacramento, going to Washington, D.C., and advocating for kids.
And I think that is, you know, in the justice.
And giving parents the learning materials to teach their children, this is what you do. And there are neighborhoods all over that have these families who are gathering together to keep our kids safe.
Well, you know, I think that that's amazing. And, you know, thank you so much for sharing that, because I don't, you know, it's emotional as well.
It is.
And then talking about emotional, you know, I know that you did the, you know, headlines for breaking news. How did you do that? You know, because I mean, you know, sometimes you get like not very good experiences. So how you handle that, you know, and especially if it is a job day to day and doing that?
It was, you know, it was part of my job when I worked for the cable channel. You know, it's that little 5-minute local edition news. I mean, we did a few, you know, stories, and you type them up, and it was okay. I mean,
do you think
that's why I got out of the news business, because you know, it's just so depressing, and that's why I left the news business to go into helping nonprofits.
Okay, so that was my question. Like, did it take a certain personality to to do that kind of headlines? You know,
I love the news. Believe me, don't get me wrong. When I was in the news industry, it was like in your blood, and it was like, this is when you had, I turned the channel, 2, 4, 7, 9, 11, 12, 13, 2, 7, who's got the better, you know, who's got the first top of the first stories within the first 2 minutes. Okay, who's got the headline, who's got the better headline? I was always in competition. I've won a few awards, but you know, you're always in competition on getting that news story. But if you look at it, real news stories, it's the same story, but a different location and different people. Robbery is a robbery, a murder is a murder, you know, and it's just a fire is a fire, different location, different people. And it was wearing me down to the point where I was sad all the time. And I had this knot in the back of my neck that I just could not get out, you know, and it was like depressing. And I want to tell good stories, you know, about how the Anaheim Angels donated their grass to the local Boys and Girls Club.
And I think that, you know, we should talk about those things, and that's where we're going, like from the headline news breaking stories. Now, I know that you work with the registration. Like, can you tell us a little about like Breakfast with Gary and Kelly?
You want to talk about polar opposites? Breakfast with